time. We're going to go to further debate, and I do recognize the member for Oshawa.
Well, thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and I'm glad to be able to stand in this House and debate a government piece of legislation. It's an omnibus bill that was introduced in the House yesterday, so here we are the next day, and a 9-schedule omnibus bill. And it's a bill that rehashes a number of issues that the government has previously gone public with. In some cases have already legislated. There's a lot in this bill.
You're going to share time.
Thank you, Speaker. I've been reminded by everyone I am sharing my time. So I'm looking forward to sharing my time, but not yet. So hold your horses. Okay, so Speaker, this is a significant piece of legislation with a lot in it and a lot to talk about. But I'm standing as the critic for infrastructure, transportation and highways, and I'm going to spend the majority of my time talking about ways that this government could do better to protect Ontarians when it comes to VIN fraud, when it comes to auto theft. There are some solutions I would hope that they would reach for. So, Speaker, a bit of an overview. In Schedule 1, Cannabis Control Act, it prohibits the advertisement or promotion of cannabis sales. Yes, okay, yep. Promoting and advertising authorized cannabis should be prohibited, and municipalities should be given more funding to enforce their cannabis bylaws. We don't see that in here. Schedules 2 and 3, we've heard the government members speak about it, and I know that we will spend the time that it deserves in this House to talk about Christopher's Law. Christopher's Law from 2000 is the Provincial Sexual Offender Registry Act that requires those convicted of prescribed sexual offences under the Criminal Code to register their whereabouts upon release. We're seeing changes to Christopher's Law that are long overdue. The change is welcome to protect our most innocent in society. We have heard today about Christopher and the work of the Stevenson family to make the world better in the wake of unspeakable harm and tragedy. So those changes are indeed long overdue. Speaker, Schedule 4 of this bill is what they're calling the Community Care and Recovery Act. This schedule proposes a new bill to prohibit new and existing supervised consumption sites. Speaker, what we need to be seeing are decisions made by government that are evidence-based, with a focus on the continuum of care for all of our neighbours, regardless of where they are on their mental health and addictions journeys. Thousands of lives have been saved because of consumption and treatment sites, and now they're going to be closed. People will die. It is not the only part. It is not the only part of mental health and addiction services, but it is an important part. Taking out a part that saves lives every day isn't going to help anything. I don't hear from this government that they believe that the lives of people who have addictions have value when this is the tool that they are reaching for, is shutting down those avenues for help and support. Speaker, I have heard from community, and I'd like to share a thoughtful letter here from Devon, who writes, "The Ford government's decision to force the closure of safe consumption sites and prevent future sites is devastating. I'm writing to beg you, as the representative from a community that is suffering enormously under multiple governments' cruel public policy, to voice objection as loudly and as frequently as possible. We are simply hastening the death of our community members who are unsheltered, who have substance abuse disorders and severe mental health challenges, so we don't have to solve these problems, and it is cruel and barbaric. Letting people die so we don't have to help them as an official public policy is unforgivable." And that is exactly what this is. Please, please, please do not show a population of desperate people that we would rather have them dead than help them. Thank you for taking the time to read this and for doing your best, and that's from Devon in my community. Speaker, today we heard a number of petitions that have been sent in from across the province specific to this issue, calling on the government to continue to operate supervised consumption services and associated harm reduction programs. Folks have been highlighting that consumption and treatment services, that those sites have been instrumental in preventing thousands of deaths from the toxic drug supply. They have highlighted that the closure of supervised consumption services sites will increase the number of preventable deaths, injuries, hospitalizations, emergency room visits, and the incidence of HIV and hepatitis. These sites offer access to other health and social services, including addiction treatment. The closure of consumption and treatment service sites is a withdrawal of health services for people who use drugs and is, consequently, a denial of their right to health care. Speaker, closing supervised consumption services sites will lead to an increase in drug use in public spaces, the very thing that this government is suggesting that it cares about. And healthcare should emphasize prevention as well as treatment in a full continuum of care. People across the province have been sending to all of us petitions calling for the reversal of the decision to close supervised consumption service sites and ensure all sites remain operational and adequately funded. They're calling to increase funding for these sites, and also they want to ensure access to voluntary, publicly funded, and not-for-profit evidence-based treatment. Seems to be too much to ask from this government, and that is a harmful shame. People will die, and that seems to be a calculated risk on the part of this government. Speaker, I hope that the government will reconsider, will listen to Ontarians, will do the right thing by those struggling Ontarians, and will remove this schedule from the bill so that we could proceed without it and have these positive conversations with other sections of the bill that could be the focus. But unfortunately, this is a significant piece, and it is a wrong decision by this government. Speaker, Schedule 7 is the Courts of Justice Act. It removes the legislated cap on the amount of time a retired provincial judge can serve post-retirement. It's currently 50% of full-time service. It moves it into regulation. Okay, yes, this is a good idea, and the province needs to fully fund and staff our courtrooms, reopen shuttered courtrooms, and consider creating more courtroom space. This is a government that is shouting from the rooftops that they're building more jails, but they're not looking after our courtroom challenges. Speaker, I have something here. This was shared with me by the Durham Regional Police Services Board. They wanted to share information in relation to Local Provincial Offences Act cases dropped due to delay. This is a legal opinion that they were sharing with me. In recent years, with only 1 to 2 courtrooms functioning, there has been a growing lack of judicial resources. In 2022, there were 28 presiding days where no justice appeared for scheduled court. In 2023, there were 27 presiding days where no justice appeared for scheduled court. In 2024, or so far this year, and this was in March, there have been 15 presiding days where no justice appeared, and an additional 8 days where courts were combined due to one courtroom not having a justice available. This is in regard to the Region of Durham Provincial Offences Act Court that cannot accommodate the matters before it. It goes on to say, the Regional Municipality of Durham is faced with a significant lack of judicial resources due to the Province of Ontario not allocating sufficient justices of the peace to adjudicate in this region. It is with regret that I inform Durham Regional Police Service that of the 11,000 charges being withdrawn on Monday, approximately 35 to 40% of those were laid by DRPS. We will continue to prioritize our most serious cases involving high public interest. Things aren't good anywhere, eh? So this change is allowing retired justices to work more in their retirement. That's a stopgap measure. Coming from education and knowing that retired teachers are in high demand right now, I understand the need to be creative, but how is this the permanent solution? It isn't. Speaker, I'd like to talk about Schedule 8. Schedule 8 is changes under the Highway Traffic Act, creates an offence under the Highway Traffic Act to knowingly submit, display, present, or surrender a false vehicle identification number for a motor vehicle in certain documents. So this bill creates a new provincial offence of using a false vehicle identification number, or VIN. Fun fact, tampering with a VIN is already a crime under Section 353.1 of the Federal Criminal Code, carrying a prison term of up to 5 years, and this bill would make this a provincial offence as well, like a speeding ticket. So I guess it's supportable, but it seems like a half measure. If someone isn't deterred by, by the fact that it's already a crime under the Federal Criminal Code, then a provincial offence may or may not be the significant deterrent that this government and this minister are making it out to be. But again, this is an after-the-crime measure and not preventative, arguably not preventative. Speaker, we've talked a lot about car theft in this room. Here's from a Toronto Star: car thieves could lose driver's license for life, Ford government says. This is actually regarding another bill that's before this House right now. Under the proposed new law, anyone convicted of motor vehicle theft would automatically lose their license for 10 years. A second conviction would mean 15 years suspension, 3 convictions, and the suspension is for life. Critics, however, say the new penalties will have little effect. Adam Weisberg, managing partner at Weisberg Law Criminal Lawyers, LLP, called the proposed law misguided, completely ineffective. He said the perpetrators of these crimes are already not deterred by the prison sentences they face. There's little that the provincial government can do to combat auto theft other than direct police resources at investigations into these auto theft rings. It's just a frustrated attempt from our province to signal that frustration to the public. Yeah, we're seeing that again in this bill. This government's been talking about cracking down on VINs, and I was expecting them to crack down on VINs, but that's not what's happening. We're tinkering around the edges. Speaker, earlier this month, the Toronto Police made 59 arrests and filed 302 charges after uncovering a scheme involving the registration of phony VINs by employees of a Service Ontario location. Basically, re-VINning has been happening right under this government's nose. And it's hard to see how making this federal crime a provincial offence, like a speeding ticket, is going to deter that fraud. The NDP and I have called for preventative measures to stop the fraudulent use of VINs before the fraud occurs, including creating a system to verify suspicious VINs, which exists in some other provinces. Speaker, frontline workers at Service Ontario, we've seen in this case, some are, well, I suppose anyone is susceptible to corruption by organized crime, and I think that that's what we have seen here. But we also know that other Service Ontario workers, came forward and do their job as well as they can with an A to Z menu of services that they offer at Service Ontario. So those frontline workers are tasked with, I guess, crossing their fingers when they're registering VINs and making sure that they are indeed authentic, because in order to ensure that VINs are the real deal, they would physically have to inspect. And to suggest otherwise is verifying paperwork, not verifying the vehicle. And that's an important thing to understand. There is no digital fix for this. How am I for time? Oh, I got some time. So I'm going to read from this article, Other Provinces Inspect Vehicles with Problematic VINs, Why Not Ontario? And this was from a while ago. This is March 2024. After a 32-year career as a theft investigator with the Ontario Provincial Police, John Todd started working for a business that helps provincial government sniff out phony vehicle registrations as a way to curb vehicle theft. The 17-digit VIN is a vehicle serial number intended to help governments, police, and insurers link a vehicle to its owner to prevent all manner of auto theft and fraud. In Alberta and Saskatchewan, in cases where a clerk in the vehicle registration office or insurance company finds an issue with the VIN of a vehicle being registered, the vehicle is flagged for inspection. However, those inspections don't happen in Ontario, which makes it easy for thieves to sell stolen vehicles in Canada's largest province with little fear someone will ever check on the vehicle's history, Todd says. He goes on to say, he said the lack of an inspection program in Ontario is actually making the province a destination for thieves to register vehicles stolen in other jurisdictions. Quote, I've been warning the Ontario government about this for 4 years, he said. Police are starting to raise the issue. There was a national summit a little while ago, and we saw OPP Commissioner Thomas Carrick speak in his role as the head of the Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police, and he told a House of Commons committee during that time, mandatory inspections of vehicles with problematic VIN should be mandatory. He also called for a national system of vehicle registrations. Right now, each province manages its own system. Fun fact, we live in a province that doesn't manage its own system. Prove me wrong. Here's an article, Speaker, just bought a used car, there's a chance it's stolen as thieves exploit weakness in vehicle registrations. Nearly a third of stolen vehicles may now have been title washed and resold. This is from a CBC News piece in April. It's that Derek Crocker bought a used Ford F-150 pickup truck from a dealership in Toronto in 2022. After Crocker entered what should have been the truck's unique VIN in Ford's app, the function to remotely start the vehicle never worked. But it wasn't until his F-150 was in an accident and required bodywork that the problem with the VIN was revealed. So he Googled the VIN number that was on his truck and found a truck for sale in Utah. This story is worth a read for the folks at home. Crocker's own insurance would not cover his loss because he had, albeit unknowingly, purchased a stolen vehicle. After a long discussion with the dealership that sold him the stolen truck, his money was returned. How could two cars with the same VIN be registered? Provincial centres that administer vehicle registration, such as Service Ontario, do not have a system that checks if VINs already exist in other jurisdictions. They don't even check if it exists elsewhere in our own jurisdiction. It's wild. Speaker, I've had local media ask, if I'm sure that the government, if the government could actually crack down on this and could verify problematic VINs, why aren't they? And the answer to them and the answer to you, the answer to the folks at home, I don't know. How many vehicles are registered every year? That's a real question. I don't know. 500,000? Million? I have no idea. But of those vehicles that are registered, how many of them have problematic or missing, partial, duplicate, improper, or suspicious VINs? And of those that might, I don't know how they're flagged, but if they were flagged, how many are physically examined to determine if those VINs are legit? The answer to that, unless they prove otherwise, unless they tell me otherwise, I'm going to say is 0. None. So how many, if none of them are ever checked, how many duplicates, how many problematic VINs are on our registry right now? There is no wonder that criminals are literally coming to Ontario to do this, to launder VINs, to commit VIN fraud. So here we have a bill in front of us that says we're going to create a provincial offense if you knowingly tamper with a VIN. Okay, but it's already a crime, a federal crime. So how does this, tantamount to a speeding ticket, serve as a deterrent? Does not protect Ontarians. Speaker, I've already talked about the Project Thoroughbred. The results of that investigation, known as Project Thoroughbred, were that the Toronto police have recovered 363 stolen vehicles valued at approximately $14 million. They laid 302 charges at the time of this writing. And it says, according to Police Service Ontario, employees knowingly used false documents provided by car thieves to portray fake VINs as valid. The fraudulent VINs were then used to register for real Ontario license plates for the stolen vehicles that were sold to unknowing buyers at a significant discount. They also discovered chop shops throughout the city. Taverner said, quote, "As you can imagine, this is a very lucrative market for these stolen vehicles and parts. They offer high rewards financially with minimal risk," he said. Going on, the Ontario government announced new legislation that would introduce a provincial offence for fraudulent vehicle registrations and re-VINing. That's what we're debating today. The article goes on to say the offence would come with fines of up to $100,000, up to 6 months in jail, and driver's license or vehicle permit suspensions, according to the announcement made by the Transportation Minister. Toronto Police urges customers to be extra careful when purchasing a used vehicle and to make sure they obtain vehicle history reports prior to making a purchase. That's how we're supposed to, that's what we're supposed to do if we're buying used vehicles, is crawl under a car and check it ourselves, I guess. Rely on the Carfax report. Tighten this up. Speaker, interestingly, the province, this government, the Ontario's Regulatory Registry posted, this was dated June 24, 2021, under the previous Minister of Transportation. There was a summary of proposal. They explain about VINs, what they're for. It says, quote, "Sometimes bad actors attempt to fraudulently apply for an assigned VIN. They may do this to clone a VIN of another vehicle or to mask a stolen vehicle. Sometimes they try to replace a VIN to trick buyers into thinking that an irreparably damaged vehicle that is only usable for parts is fit for on-the-road use." This is the MTO, this government's MTO. Okay, this is from their summary of proposal. Currently, Alberta and Saskatchewan use a third-party company to properly identify vehicles and issue VINs to motor vehicles and trailers. The company completes a detailed inspection of the vehicle and investigation of the history of the vehicle before a VIN can be assigned. After introducing third-party investigations into their assigned VIN programs, Alberta and Saskatchewan reported significant improvements to the integrity of their assigned VIN programs, including recovery of stolen vehicles. So this was related to the MOMS Act, which was the Moving Ontarians More Safely Act of 2021. The Ministry of Transportation put out this summary of proposal and said the ministry committed to explore options on how to improve the integrity of Ontario's assigned VIN program. The objective is to reduce fraud and help recover stolen vehicles by preventing bad actors from fraudulently applying for an assigned VIN. That is why the MTO is seeking feedback on how to improve the assigned VIN program. One question that we are looking to include is whether the public would support requiring an investigation by a third-party company before assigning a VIN. And it goes on. So it says, "We invite you to review the details of this proposal and submit comments for MTO's consideration. Please let us know about your ideas, potential benefits, or concerns that you have, as well as any recommendations to improve the integrity of Ontario's assigned VIN program." That's from the MTO. That's from June 24th, 2021. What is today? November something? 19th, 2024. What did you do with the input? What did this ministry do with everything that they heard and learned? Sweet nothing, it would seem. What did you hear from folks? Are people interested in having the VIN registry protected and having a VIN verification system? Is that what you heard? Is that not what you heard? Like, where's the leadership? I'll tell you where there's some leadership. There was some leadership at the Standing Committee on Public Safety and National Security, February 29th, 2024. The Commissioner of the Ontario Provincial Police, Commissioner Thomas Carrick, these are from his remarks. I've already referenced this before, but he says, quote, "Today, organized crime has a strong hold on the illicit transnational auto theft market. It's estimated that 80% of passenger vehicles are exported and 10% of these vehicles are re-VINed and sold domestically, with the remaining 10% being chopped down and sold for parts. The lucrative international market of stolen Canadian vehicles has surged as many of the desirable vehicles are readily available in Canada and are either very costly internationally or simply not available for purchase in those countries they're being exported to. He goes on to specifically say, in response to this public and officer safety concern and to disrupt the illicit transnational market being controlled by organized criminal networks, the profits of which often finance other criminal activities ranging from drug trafficking and arms dealing to human smuggling and even international terrorism, Canadian police leaders are calling for a strengthening of port security and monitoring mechanisms, including inspections and the use of technology to disrupt the illegal export of stolen vehicles. We're calling for verification of third-party vehicle registration, the physical inspection of problematic VINs during the registration process, and the creation of a national system for vehicle registrations. It was a much longer submission, but I'm highlighting the provincial pieces. Nobody is denying that there is a federal component to this, but there is an opportunity for the province to show leadership. You're being told by insurance, insurance companies, you're being told by police, former police, willfully ignoring, by your own words of the summary of proposal, that you were seeking input to make the world a better place when it comes to revinning, and yet here we are. Side note, the feds also want Ontario to do more in auto theft push. They are interested in having provincial partners across the country. We need to make sure that our registry holds water, not just holds problematic VINs. Speaker, the continuing in Schedule 8, currently the Registrar of Commercial Vehicle Operators has a limited range of remedies for non-compliant truck operators, such as a cancellation of the Commercial Vehicle Operators Registration or CVOR certificate. The changes proposed in this bill seem reasonable. The bill was tabled yesterday. I'd be interested in hearing from the trucking industry and road safety stakeholders to properly understand all of the impacts, but it doesn't do anything to address the trucking challenges that we know to be rampant in this province. The Ontario Trucking Association says it believes a lot of change is necessary to make the roads a safer place for truck drivers. A recent survey by the Ontario Trucking Association shows the top 3 concerns for truckers on northern highways are unsafe passing by other vehicles, the lack of truck rest areas, and trained truck drivers. The well-trained truck drivers piece is really, really challenging for folks right now. I think everybody in this House watched the CBC Marketplace episode. The hidden camera and internal memo reveal how unqualified truck drivers are getting onto Canada's roads. It was shocking, and we don't see measures in this bill reflecting what we learned. It was shared by Marketplace. A drive test examiner responsible for testing people who want to obtain their commercial trucking license had said, in our company there are times where we feel that someone shouldn't be passing and we have to pass them. Our hands are tied. It was someone who highlighted that there are people who took bribes and gave licenses. There was behind the scenes with hidden cameras. Ontario's Minister of Transportation declined an interview request with Marketplace multiple times on this issue. Spokesperson from the ministry sent an email that said, if Serco is unable to control fraud in the programs it administers, we will reevaluate the contract with them. However, the ministry was made aware of the memo from Serco multiple times, including months in advance of publication. So talk's cheap, guys. It's very concerning that we have real information about how dangerous things are right now, and we don't see the leadership. We don't see it in this bill that the government is actually making changes. The MPP for Thunder Bay Superior North has asked this Premier about the blatant fraud and bribery that was illustrated in that Marketplace segment. let's see, Truckers for Safer Highways. Travis McDougall wrote a very thoughtful series of letters to the Minister, to the Premier, and said it's evident that the Ministry of Transportation has failed to adequately ensure that all new drivers are properly trained and licensed. As a result, there are drivers on our highways who should not be behind the wheel of heavy trucks. This presents a serious safety risk to all road users. We're calling on your government to take immediate and decisive action to demonstrate that safety on Ontario's highways is a top priority, not merely a talking point. With the winter season upon us, the dangers posed by the current situation are even more pressing, and we fear that without urgent action, we may witness further tragedies on our roads. Speaker, I'll end with the government talking about careless driving as a penalty, is talking about laying the hammer down with the one hand. But with the other hand, they still have policies on the books to let people plead down. That careless charge, if police officers actually lay that charge, is not actually leading to conviction, is not leading to those penalties. People are pleading down if they even get their day in court. So if the government isn't willing to fix the court backlog and the court problem, they can build all of the jails that they want, but they can say that they're going to fill them, but not if people don't go through the court system. So we have layers and layers of challenges, and we don't see this government rising to those challenges in this bill. And with that, I will share my time. Thank you.